Hello VC, it's time to show what I've been buying for the past month. Uh, this is new records to my collection from around 28th of December and until today. I have been walking through the second-hand store here in my city and been doing some great findings. As I said in the clip where I listed the best albums in 2013, we don't have any real record store here in my city, Sundsvall. So we have to depend on the second-hand stores and flea markets that we have and the records that actually is coming in there. And maybe not all the time interesting things, but sometimes I manage to find great albums to buy. And I think I've been managing to find interesting stuff during this month. Starting off with jazz album and two albums with an artist that I don't buy that much with. There are some jazz musicians actually that I'm a little bit fed up with. It's the same songs actually that are on all collections, are on all albums with this certain artist, and the same songs actually that are played on the radio, and we're talking about big band leaders like Glenn Miller all the time, Chattanooga Choo or American Patrol in the same style. Duke Ellington, another example, and it's very close when it comes to Charlie Parker. It may sound a little strange since I nominated his and Dizzy Gillespie's concert from Massey Hall, one of the best findings in 2013, but that one was an exception. It was a live performance with Charlie Parker being better than he ever was. I'm not saying that Charlie Parker wasn't a great musician. He definitely was, and I'm definitely not going to deny the meaning that he has been having on the jazz music style. But some of his studio recordings tend sometimes to sound very much alike, and there are also the same songs that you hear every time. But these two albums that I found actually was, I became very interested in them. We have first this one. This is Bird, the Savoy Recordings Master Takes. I have some of these Savoy recording series, and definitely great albums, great jazz music. This is a 2 LP set, and of course there are some classical Charlie Parker songs here. You have Coco, you have Now's the Time, Billy's Bounce, and so on. But there also were some songs that I actually never heard before and didn't have on any vinyl or CD. So this one actually I was very interested in. And I was even more interested in this Charlie Parker album. This is the Verve years, 1952 to 54. Of course then released on Verve. Also a 2 LP set with some recordings that were the last that Charlie Parker did before his death in 1955. And this contains some of the more odd Charlie Parker recordings. We have some Charlie Parker with big band. We also have Charlie Parker with arrangement by Gil Evans. And then of course it contains instruments like clarinet, flute, oboes, French horns, and so on. Like Miles Davis' Birth of the Cool. We also have Charlie Parker with his famous recordings with strings, and this is definitely going to be very interesting to listen to. Moving on, which is a very interesting thing to say because this album also is titled Moving On. It is the Commodores 70 Soul from 1974 and produced by James Carmichael and the Commodores. Hopefully a funky album to listen to. This one definitely is a very interesting album. I'm buying it a little with a guessing. I'm hoping that this is great, but it could also be totally different. This is Lena Andersson with the album Det bästa som finns. Lena Andersson, famous Swedish schlager singer who had great hits in the 60s with songs like Är det konstigt att man längtar bort någon gång? Jag önskar att det alltid vore sommar and so on. Great hits. However, this one is from 1977. It's a newer album, and it could be a little too psychedelic, maybe too poppy for me, but I definitely hope that this is an album with good 70s schlager. I definitely hope that. Moving back to the jazz, and we have here Count Basie in Sweden. Recordings from Stockholm in 1962. I have recordings from Stockholm before with Count Basie, but those are from 1954. So this one is going to be very interesting. I'm not too fond of Count Basie's 60s albums, but this one is definitely, I hope, an exception. You have classics here like Little Pony and April in Paris and so on. It's going to be very interesting. A couple of albums that I bought today. We have here Daryl Hall and John Oates with the album Ecstatic from 1979. You have here it's released on, as you can see, RCA. I've been collecting Hall and Oates album from the 80s, but now when I've been starting to listen to the 70s a lot, I'm going to start buying Hall and Oates album from the 70s also. Here is a soundtrack album from a movie called Nuns on the Run. I have absolutely no idea what kind of movie this is. It is obviously a comedy, but it's consisting Eric Idle from the Monty Python and Robbie Coltrane, who I think was in a James Bond movie. When I look at the picture from the movie on the back of the sleeve, don't feel like I'm interested in seeing this movie, but I bought this soundtrack for one reason, and that is that it is many songs with the Swiss group Yellow that I actually like a lot. And it is a couple of classics like The Race and Tied Up and so on, but there's also a couple of songs that I never have heard before. They may be songs from albums that I don't have yet, but they're new to me actually. So I bought them for this group Yellow. But you also have here a song with George Harrison. You have Roll With It with Steve Winwood. You have a song with Shakespeare's Sister. So definitely I think it's going to be good music anyway. More jazz. Oscar Peterson here with the album Samba Sensitive. It is part of American Jazz and Blues History series, volume 91. Released on an odd label called Tobacco Road. Definitely, hopefully it will be interesting. I have heard this one before, and it's a very much samba and bossa nova style from Brazil, but definitely a great album. Now an artist actually that I'm a little ashamed to say it, but before 2013 started, I actually never heard of her, but then I discovered some pop ballads with her, and I definitely got very interested in her music, and I realized that she has a great voice and definitely it's very cool music, and I'm talking about Anne Murray. I'm not the kind of guy who likes country, but so her more country sounding music is definitely not my style, but she also did a lot of pop ballads that are definitely very smooth, very relaxing, and I've heard this album, and definitely a great album, a very relaxing album with some interesting, great lyrics. Another female artist, this time from the 80s, Sheila E., a self-titled album from 1987. I'm not listening that much to Sheila E.'s music, but I definitely like Prince, and as you can see here, it is released on Prince album, Prince label, Paisley Park. So definitely I hope it will be sounding a little bit funky like Prince music does. If you can remember from my introduction video, I said that one great 70s album was America's album Hideaway, and I was able to find another album with America. This is Holiday from 1974. Uh, I've been listening to this album actually, and it's consisting of many great songs, although it is totally not just as great album as Hideaway was, who I think was a little bit stronger actually, but still this has some great songs. Definitely, it is a great album, no doubt about it. A couple of CDs that I bought today. Here we have a ballad collection with Whitney Houston, Love Whitney from 2001. And here is a very interesting thing actually. I like very much the German disco singer Sandra. Marvelous artist. She has a great voice, also an extremely good-looking, gorgeous woman, but also she has one of the best producers from the 80s, Michael Cretu. And I was able to find actually a CD single from 1993 where she does a remake of her most famous hit single, Maria Magdalena, was her actual breakthrough. In its original, Maria Magdalena was released in 1985, and it's also on this CD single. It's very easy actually to find Sandra records and singles from the 80s here in Sweden, but it's much harder to find Sandra albums from the 90s and forward. Now moving on to vinyl singles, and in this case it is an EP, and even a double EP set with Errol Garner, released on, as you can see, Columbia. This is mixed trio recordings and solo recordings. It's a trio with John Simmons bass and Shadow Wilson drums, and it's classic jazz songs like I'm in the Mood for Love, Play Piano Play, Body and Soul, I Cover the Waterfront, and so on. I've listened to this one, great piano jazz, maybe one of the best Errol Garner recordings that I actually have. Very relaxing, very smooth piano playing. I definitely like this one. Great finding. Another EP in a total different style, Swedish Schlager. This is Lille Berglund with an EP released on Dux. Lille Berglund was a well-known Swedish singer in the 50s and early 60s, and this EP consists songs like Sommar med dig, Drömmer du om kärleken, La Novia, and a Swedish version of Quando Quando Quando. Definitely an EP that I think is made in the late 50s, early 60s maybe. Definitely I think it's going to be very interesting. Now going to a couple of 7-inch singles from the 80s that I bought. Well, one is in a different style, but most of them the 80s. Here we have Paul Carrack, I Live by the Groove, from his second solo album, Groove Approved. I'm not that huge fan of Paul Carrack, and Groove Approved is an okay album, nothing more, nothing less. But he did some great songs also in the 80s. When You Walk in the Room, it's definitely a great version, and this one is also a interesting, very good song actually. But here is a single actually that I was very happy to find. Here we have a Swedish group called Beauty. It is a group that is not too famous today, but they had a couple of minor hits in the early 80s. It's a song called Marilyn, sung in Swedish, and if I understand the lyrics right, it is a song about Marilyn Monroe. And on the other side, Sånt som flickor vill ha. It's from 1982, and interesting thing here is that it has been released through the Swedish girl magazine Veckorevyn, and you can see here it is a little logotype for Veckorevyn. Another interesting thing here is that a couple of years ago a person wrote to me to my webpage about the 80s, Retro-Galaxen, and asked about this song. And back then I never heard it, and she asked if I have anything, if I have it, and I said I never heard of the song. but I gave her a tip that she could write to a radio program that where you could wish 80s songs and they played it for you. And she did, and they played the song, and good for her, and it's good for me right now because I managed to find the entire single. So more Swedish 80s pop. Here is group Modesty, who had one hit in Sweden, One More Broken Heart, and this is the single. Great 80s pop, little style like Climby Fisher or John Hayes Jazz, British style. Definitely a forgotten single. I definitely like this song. Unfortunately, their latest song were not just as good as this one, but this one is definitely a great 80s tune from Sweden. Here is a German group called The Other Ones. The song called Holiday definitely has a summer feeling and a very interesting song. You can take a look at YouTube, but they do live performances of this song. They have definitely a very unique and special dance style when they sing this song. Now moving away a bit from the pop music, there is one artist that I definitely like very, very much, and it is something that I've been bringing along from home. My father is a huge fan of this artist, and I'm talking about the Swedish country Schlager singer Alf Robertson. He is an artist from Gothenburg that has a very unique and special voice. He takes country songs and translates them into Swedish. He sings very much about the little man, poor people who have drug addicts, and very nice and very, very thoughtful lyrics, and definitely I like him very, very much. And here is a single from 1973 called Har du någonsin? And on the other side, Ett gräs som var så grönt. Definitely great artist, great voice. And let's see here, RCA, Kjell Öhmans orchestra. Going back to the pop music, here is a Eurythmics single called Shame from their album Savage from 1987. Savage is definitely not one of Eurythmics' best albums. A very strange, very much experimental album. Definitely some way you can hear there's a band whose career is going downhill a little bit. But this song, Shame, is definitely one of the best songs on the album. Here is a very interesting single, actually. This is Py Bäckman. Py Bäckman, Swedish singer who has done many great songs. I like her very much. She has very interesting lyrics, very unique voice. Framtiden, single from 1987, released on Swedish label Almatea. And the interesting thing here is that it consists also on synthesizer and arrangement Mats Wester, who 7 years later were to form the band Nordman, who had great success with lyrics by Py Bäckman. And you might say that this may be one of the earliest collaborations between Py Bäckman and what was to become Nordman. So this is a very interesting single, I definitely think. I'm going to finish off with a couple of Stevie Wonder singles from the same album, In Square Circle from 1985. This is Overjoyed from 1985. I actually never heard these songs on radio when I was a kid. They didn't play much pop tunes at all, but that wasn't on the hit charts when I was a kid. So this one definitely was a bit forgotten. And the same goes with the other single from In Square Circle, Land of Lala from 86. It was released then. So I like Stevie Wonder very much, as I said in the introduction clip. So these were what I have been buying during January, and I hope that it's going to be a just as good February. However, one may not know. So I'm thinking about now doing a couple of clips where I show records from my collection in different styles. I'm thinking about doing a jazz clip where I show my jazz records. But that is for the future. Until next time, I hope you have a very nice weekend, and so long.